Greetings. Today I would like to speak about a rather unusual chapter in history, one that is well known because of the people involved. And it was at the beginning of the 13th century, in fact just at the end of the first third in 1232, that the Knights Templar were tortured in a most cruel way to make confessions to things that we are not sure that they actually really did. The Knights Templar have become, in our times, rather romantic and heroic people, a group of people who have done great things. They were responsible for many things around the Divine Feminine, building churches like Chartres and Notre Dame in France, places where the worship of the Black Madonna was maintained into Christianity. The way that they ran their communities was very advanced and very egalitarian in their time. Even though they were associated with the Crusades, their role within the Crusades was to protect the Divine Feminine, was to protect the people who were not necessarily on the Crusades, but were on pilgrimage. Their initial time was to allow people to walk the earth in safe passage along pilgrimage, and they organized not only their community, but their whole economic system was designed to allow people to transverse across Europe in a way that they were safe from plunder and bands of people. Some of these people have been known also to have a spirituality that is to help people being liberated from slavery and prisons. So the Knights Templar were not necessarily only involved in the war of the Crusades, but also in other aspects of it, and through history have been responsible and participant in the protection of the Divine Sophia. We know in some cases where this has been taken possibly into places where it isn't based on history, such as Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code, where the Knights Templar were protecting the sarcophagus of Mary Magdalene. The worship of Mary Magdalene became the place where one's bloodline could connect with the divine light from the spiritual sun. However, a time came in Europe where Philip the Fair decided that this group of people had become too powerful and decided that they should be eradicated. And they were tortured to death under gruesome circumstances, where one can imagine hearing the screams of people being hurt physically to make confessions. But I would like to talk a little bit about what this process of torture actually affects. If we consider the life of a knight in the Templar order, in order to be able to uphold such a life, a great schooling needed to be gone through. And this schooling involved an inner process whereby the passions and desires of the soul and of the blood and the desires of the body needed to be faced. We could call it the temptations of the flesh, if we wanted to. And these temptations needed to be faced and mastered. And the process of doing that means that everything that the passion in the blood and the desire in the soul and the body needed to be experienced. As human beings, we experience this anyway. And it is easy to think that the mastery of such temptations is an easy process. But it's not. It's a very deep process where we are asked to, or driven to, face the temptations, find within ourselves that we are likely to be able to do that, and come to a humble position to say that whatever temptation, whatever wrongdoing, whatever evil that I stand in front of, I know I have a place in myself which is capable of doing that. I am capable of the worst evil that I can conceive of. And then to find the strength and the courage to turn that humility, to turn that energy into a spiritual development. This means that a huge power for good, for nobility, for compassion arises within a knightly soul in that sense. However, the journey is inscripted into their memory of being able to have faced those temptations. And certain groups of people, groups with power, groups who use rites for dark ends, have known that through torture, the person being tortured would not allow, but the memory body would be broken, and that these memories of the temptations would rise up within the person, and they would experience them as if they had done them, no longer as if they had conquered them and mastered them, but these temptations rise up within the person as if they were an actual deed. And so a person can confess to something that they haven't done, even though it is a process that within themselves they have mastered by not succumbing to the temptations of doing such despicable things. This is also what is known as brainwashing, where a person's philosophical system is broken down while implanting other thought systems within their being. And while those old philosophies are being broken, the new philosophy or dogma that they are being given becomes real for them. And in this way, it is not just a deed that takes place in the human soul or in the psychosomatic bodies of the individual. They become actual deeds inscripted into the world. This is the dark power of torture. And so we might ask, when the Templars were tortured to death, and the order that was so noble and in upholding the divine feminine and trying to create community that was actually for the benefit of humanity and achieving great success throughout the known world at the time, came to an end, what does that have to do with us today? Well, I believe quite a lot. For in our current situation where the world is in such strife, there are many people who are suffering. There are many people who are imprisoned and many people who are brutally abused before they die. And I would ask the question, what is the effect of such abuse, of such torturous circumstances? We could even go further and take it away from only the war-torn zones. But how many people live in domestic violence situations who quietly bear the oppressive nature and the imposing abusive nature of a partner? These are not only male perpetrators against women, but there is also violence in many, many forms between human beings. Violence seems to be something that human beings can do to each other. Somehow we manage to feel like we gain a lot of power when we use our strength to torture, to create pain within the other person. So it's not just the physical torture of some war prisoner or some political prisoner. It is also the torturous emotional control we have over each other that allows us to confuse each other. That the person who is the victim, or the person who is the victim of domestic violence, or the person who is a victim of some atrocity of war or some social abuse, starts to believe that what happened to them is not wrong. We see this time and time again in the cases of abuse, that the victim becomes confused about what is right and wrong and finds it difficult to stand up for what they know has happened against them. We live in a torturous world, and I would ask that each of us finds it within themselves to face the temptation to push our power over another person, to use our emotional power, to use our physical power, to use our sense of revenge and our sense of jealousy to want to overwhelm another person's well-being in a torturous way, where our thought system starts to suppress that of another. This is one of the hidden sides, or one of the at least lesser acknowledged sides of the atrocities of a violent world, where we are using dark powers to gain our own sense of well-being by using our power over another person. We can face these inner temptations ourselves and transform them by looking at this moment where we choose or would like to choose to assert through some form, be it physical, emotional, spiritual power over another person, and pull back from it and master this power and turn it to the good. In this way, the noble community of the Knights Templar might re-emerge as a power of love and compassion and inspire us to start building community that are built out of the ways and the laws of the divine feminine once again.